The city of Ibadan had already become restless before noon. Buses shouted with their horns. Kiki riders squeezed through narrow spaces. Women called out prices from their stalls. Smoke from roasted corn and fried plantain floated into the hot air. And in one crowded corner of Bodija Market, under a patched blue umbrella that had seen too many rainy seasons, sat a young tailor named Amara. Her shop was not really a shop. It was a small wooden table, an aging sewing machine, a plastic chair with one side repaired by rope, a hanging line of unfinished blouses, and a metal box where she kept needles, thread, chalk, and the little money she made. People passed her every day without remembering her face. That was how life had always been. Amara was not from a rich family. She had no husband, no father people talked about, no mother waiting at home. She lived in one room at the back of an old compound and survived by sewing torn school uniforms, adjusting church dresses, and mending wrappers for market women who always complained about money even when they had enough. Yet there was one thing about Amara that made her different. Her heart had not become hard. Not yet. Not even after life had given her many reasons to let it harden. Every day, sometime after noon, a blind old man would appear near her stall. His name to most people did not matter. They called him whatever they liked. Blind beggar, old nuisance, street burden, useless man. But his real name was Baba Jabari. His clothes were always neat in the way poor people try to remain dignified. Old, yes. Worn, yes. But clean. He moved with a stick in one hand and careful memory in his steps. He would stop near the stalls, not begging loudly, not forcing anyone, just standing there as if he had learned long ago that human beings could wound a person more deeply than hunger ever could. At the first food stand, the woman there usually hissed at him. "At your age, is this what you are doing? Go away." Oh! At the second, a man mocked him for walking too slowly. At the third, some boys would laugh and imitate the way he searched for direction with his stick. Baba Jabari rarely answered. He only lowered his face and kept moving. But when he reached Amara's stall, the story changed. Amara would always lift her head from the fabric she was sewing. "Baba, sit here in the shade." Sometimes she gave him water, sometimes a kara wrapped in paper, sometimes rice from the small plastic bowl she had brought from home. When she had nothing, she still found words, and kind words to a person who had been starved of dignity can feel like food. One hot Thursday afternoon, the market was especially cruel. A woman near the provisions stand accused Baba Jabari of touching her basket. He had touched nothing. He had only turned the wrong way. But before he could explain, she slapped his walking stick from his hand and shouted, "Get away from here! Must you disturb decent people every day?" Oh! People turned. Some laughed. Some watched. None helped. Baba Jabari bent slowly, feeling the dusty ground with trembling hands. Before he could find the stick, Amara rushed from her stall. "Leave him alone," she said. The woman laughed. "So, now you are his defender." Amara did not argue. She picked up the old man's stick, dusted it gently, placed it back in his hand and said, "Baba, come. Sit." Then she took the small plate of beans she had planned to eat herself, placed it in front of him, and added the last piece of bread she had. The blind old man paused. "Child, this is your food." "I know," Amara replied softly. "Eat." From the opposite side of the road, inside a black Lexus Jeep waiting for traffic to ease, a woman watched everything. Her name was Hajia Zainab Danjuma, a widow, a businesswoman, a name spoken with respect in boardrooms and fear in some government offices. She owned textile warehouses, real estate, a transport company, and half the properties people whispered about without ever knowing the true owner. People said many things about her, that she was too strict, too proud, too powerful, too quiet. But what most people did not know was that Hajia Zainab noticed small things, and once something touched her spirit, she did not ignore it. That day, she was supposed to be on her way to a meeting. Instead, she sat in traffic and kept looking at the young tailor. There was nothing flashy about the girl. No beauty shaped by luxury, no expensive clothes, no performance, no audience. And yet the compassion on her face had looked too real to be acted. Zainab kept staring, even after traffic moved, even after her driver asked, "Madam, should I continue?" She remained silent a moment, then said, "Yes, drive." But her mind did not leave that market. It remained with the tailor, and the blind old man, and the strange feeling that what she had just witnessed was not ordinary. All through the afternoon, Hajia Zainab tried to focus. Documents were placed before her. Calls came in. Her accountant asked for signatures. A manager needed approval for a warehouse purchase, but she was distracted. Each time she looked at a piece of paper, the image returned. A poor girl giving away her own food. No cameras, no praise, no advantage, just kindness. By evening, Zainab was annoyed with herself. Why was she thinking about strangers? She had seen poverty all her life. She had seen worse things than that, much worse. So why had this one moment settled into her spirit like a stone dropped into still water? That night at dinner, her niece Layla, who lived with her, noticed her silence. "Auntie, are you worried about something?" Zainab looked up from her plate. "No," Layla smiled. "That means yes." For a moment, Zainab almost dismissed it, but instead she said, "I saw something today." "What kind of thing?" "A girl in the market, a tailor." Layla waited. "She gave her food to a blind old man while everybody else treated him badly." Layla nodded slowly. "That is rare these days." "Yes," Zainab said, "too rare. And now, you cannot stop thinking about it." Zainab gave her a small look. Layla laughed. "I know you." The widow leaned back in her chair. "There was something else," she said. "What?" "I cannot explain it." Layla did not push. She had learned that when Zainab said she could not explain something, it usually meant her instincts had already begun working. The next morning, Zainab took a different route to work. Not because she had to, because she wanted to pass the market again. And there, under the same faded umbrella, was Amara, bent over fabric, foot pressing the pedal of her machine. Concentrated, calm. A short distance away, under a dusty almond tree, sat Baba Jabari. And after a while, exactly as before, Amara stood up, walked over, and handed him a small bowl and a sachet of water. This time, Zainab did not drive away immediately. She watched longer. Then she turned to her driver. "That girl. I want to know her name." The driver nodded. "And the old man, too." "Yes, madam." Quietly. "Oh, yes, madam." That evening, the information came. The tailor's name was Amara. No parents, no husband, raised by an aunt who had since died, lives alone, hard-working, no known trouble. The old man's name was Baba Jabari, blind for many years. No close family seen around him. Survives mostly by help from strangers, though not many strangers helped. Zainab listened and said nothing. But something in the report unsettled her even more. No family, on both sides. It was as if life had pulled broken people toward each other in that market corner. And somehow, she felt she had just stepped close to a story that was still hidden. 3 days later, Hajia Zainab went to the market herself, not in her usual grand style. No convoy, no assistant, no high shoes. She dressed simply, covered her hair with a plain scarf, and walked through the market like someone who did not want to be noticed. When she stopped at Amara's stall, the young tailor looked up. "Good afternoon, Ma." "Good afternoon." Zainab picked up a blouse from the line. "Can you adjust this for me?" "Oh." Amara stood respectfully. "Yes, Ma, I can." "When can it be ready?" "Tomorrow evening." Zainab looked at her carefully. "You are sure?" "Yes, Ma." She named a fair price. Not desperate, not inflated, just fair. Zainab noticed. Many people changed when they sensed money. This girl did not. As Amara measured the cloth, Baba Jabari approached slowly from behind. Amara noticed immediately. "Baba, one moment," she said gently, leaving her customer for just a few seconds to guide the old man into the shade. Zainab watched that too. Not irritation, not embarrassment, not performance. Amara returned. "I'm sorry, Ma. It's fine," Zainab said. Then, after a pause, she asked, "Do you know him?" "The old man?" "Yes." Amara shook her head. "No, Ma." "Then, why do you help him every day?" Amara looked surprised by the question. "As in, you owe him nothing." For a moment, the tailor was quiet. Then she smiled faintly. "He is hungry." Zainab stared at her. That was all. No long speech, no self-righteousness. Just a simple answer that made many educated people look poor in spirit. "He is hungry," Amara repeated softly. "If I can help, why shouldn't I?" Zainab said nothing after that. But when she left, she did not feel like the same woman who had entered the market. Some days passed. Zainab returned twice, then 3 times. At first, she came as a customer. After that, as a woman curious about another woman's quiet strength. Amara did not know who she really was. She only knew that the elegant older woman was different from other customers. She listened. She did not insult. She did not bargain over every coin. and she looked at people as if she was trying to read the truth hiding behind their faces. One late afternoon, while Amara was sewing the hem of a child's dress, she began humming under her breath. It was not a popular song, not a church chorus, not a radio tune, just an old lullaby, soft and almost absent-minded. Baba Jabari, who had been sitting nearby, suddenly lifted his head. The sound struck him like lightning. He did not speak at first. He only listened. Amara kept sewing and humming. When she finished, the old man's voice came quietly. "Child?" Amara turned. "Yes, Baba?" "That song." She smiled. "What about it? Where did you hear it?" "My mother used to sing it." The old man's fingers tightened around his stick. For a moment, he could not speak. "What did you say?" "My mother sang it to me when I was small. At least that is what I remember." The market noise continued around them, but for Baba Jabari, everything had suddenly become far away. "That song," he whispered. "My daughter used to sing that exact song." Amara frowned slightly. "Maybe many people know it." The old man shook his head. "No." He spoke with strange certainty. "No, not like that. Not with those words." Amara looked at him more closely. "My mother's name was Sade," she said. "That's all I know." Baba Jabari froze. His lips parted slightly. Years fell away inside him. His daughter, his lost daughter. Her name had also been Sade. He swallowed hard. "Child, what did you say your mother's name was?" "Sade." "Oh." The old man's breathing changed. Amara noticed immediately. "Baba, are you okay?" He did not answer that question. Instead, with trembling voice, he asked, "Do you have anything that belonged to her?" Amara hesitated. Then she opened her small metal box and brought out a folded piece of old Ankara cloth, carefully wrapped in nylon to protect it from dust. "This is all I kept." It was torn, faded, ordinary to anyone else. But when Baba Jabari touched the cloth with his fingers, his whole body shivered. Because sewn into the corner, almost worn away by time, was a special hand-stitch pattern, a rising sun made of golden thread. His daughter had invented that pattern herself as a teenager. No one else in their compound stitched like that. No one. The old man's hands began to tremble. He touched the cloth again, then again. His face turned upward, blind eyes shining with tears. "God." Amara felt sudden fear. "What is it?" Baba Jabari swallowed. "My daughter used to stitch this sign." Amara's heartbeat rose. "What do you mean?" "It was hers," he whispered. "This pattern, this cloth work, this song." Amara stared. The market sounds blurred around her. She heard her own voice as if from far away. "My mother died when I was small." "Who told you?" "My aunt." "Oh, what aunt?" "Auntie BC. She raised me." "Ah!" "And your father?" "I never knew him." The old man lowered his head. For years he had believed both his daughter and her child were dead after the workshop fire. That was what people said. That was what he was forced to accept. But now the cloth in his hand was telling another story. A story no one had prepared him to hear. That night, Baba Jabari could not sleep. He sat outside the abandoned structure where he usually rested and let memory swallow him. Many years earlier, he had not been a beggar. He had not been blind. He had not been the man people mocked on the street. He had once been a respected master tailor in Abeokuta. Not rich, but respected. He trained apprentices. He sewed wedding attire. He was known for detail, patience, and beautiful finishing. His daughter Sade had inherited his hands. She was young, bright, and gifted. When she laughed, the house felt alive. When she sewed, even older women nodded in approval. Then she fell in love with a mechanic from another part of town. There had been resistance, arguments, family pride, then compromise, then plans. But before life could settle into anything, tragedy arrived. One night, fire consumed part of the tailoring block where Baba Jabari worked. There had been rumors of a land dispute, whispers of sabotage, talk of a business rival who wanted the property cleared. In the chaos, Sade disappeared with her infant daughter. The child had been barely 1 year old. Smoke, screams, confusion. Afterward, people said they saw no survivors from that corner. Baba Jabari searched until his body broke. Then life struck again. During the same terrible period, chemicals from the burning workshop and a later untreated eye infection took his sight little by little. By the time the smoke of grief cleared, his daughter was gone, his granddaughter was gone, his business was gone, and darkness had entered his eyes for good. Now, after all those years, a song and a piece of cloth were reopening a grave he had sealed inside himself. Could Amara be that child? Could life be that strange? Could God return a person through kindness? He did not know. But for the first time in many years, hope frightened him more than pain. The next day, Hajia Zainab came to the market and found tension in the air. Amara looked distracted. Baba Jabari looked as if he had not slept. When Zainab asked what had happened, Amara hesitated. Then, perhaps because she had grown to trust the older woman, she told her everything. The lullaby, the cloth, the old man's reaction, the possibility that her mother and his daughter were the same person. When she finished, Zainab did not speak immediately. She only asked one question. The fire, do you know where it happened? Abiyakuta, Baba Jabari said quietly. Many years ago. Zainab's eyes sharpened. A tailoring block? Yes. Sets. With a property dispute before the fire? The old man turned his face toward her voice. How do you know that? Now it was Zainab who fell silent, because years earlier, after her husband died, she had personally reviewed many of his old case files. He had once worked privately on commercial fraud matters. One file had stayed in her mind. A burned tailoring property in Abiyakuta, a forged transfer, witnesses bribed into silence, a craftsman ruined. She had not remembered the victim's name, not until now. Come, she said at last. Amara blinked. Come where? To my office. The girl stared. Baba Jabari remained still. There may be records, Zainab said. Old records. Amara looked overwhelmed. Ma, I don't understand. You do not need to understand everything yet, Zainab replied. Only come. There was authority in her tone now, the kind that did not beg belief. For the first time, Amara wondered who this woman really was. When Amara arrived at Zainab's office the next morning, she nearly turned back. The building itself made her feel small. Glass doors, polished floors, security men who spoke into tiny radios, receptionists who looked as if they stepped out of magazines. This was not a place for people like her. But before fear could win, Layla came downstairs to receive her. You must be Amara, she said warmly. Yes, I'm Layla. Come, Auntie is waiting. When the office door opened, Amara saw not the simple customer from the market, but the full truth. Hajia Zainab Danjuma, power sitting quietly behind a desk, grace sharpened by discipline, the kind of woman newspapers sometimes photographed from a distance. Amara stood frozen. You, she whispered. Zainab gave a small nod. Yes, sit. Amara sat slowly. I didn't know. I know. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to know who you were before you knew who I was. The answer was honest. Amara respected it immediately. Files were placed on the desk. Old documents, photocopies, witness statements, property maps, a faded photograph of a damaged tailoring workshop, and one name, Jabari Bello. Baba Jabari sat quietly beside Amara, hands resting on his stick. Zainab spoke carefully. My late husband handled many quiet investigations. This case was one of them. He believed the fire was not accidental. Amara listened as if the room itself had stopped breathing. The land was wanted by another businessman. There were forged transfer papers, missing signatures. People were pressured. And my daughter? Baba Jabari asked hoarsely. Zainab lowered her eyes. There is no confirmed record of her death. The words hit the room like thunder. Amara turned to the old man. His lips began to shake. No confirmed death, meaning there had always been uncertainty, meaning someone had ended the search too early, meaning a lie had been allowed to survive. Zainab turned to Amara. You said an aunt raised you. Yes. Was she truly your aunt? Amara stared. I don't know. Zainab leaned back slowly. Then that is where we begin. A week later, with Zainab's help, they located someone from Amara's past, not Auntie Bisi. She had died 2 years earlier, but Bisi's older friend, Mama Ronke, was still alive and remembered more than she was comfortable saying. At first, Mama Ronke refused to speak. Then Zainab placed a photograph of young Shade on the table. The old woman's eyes changed. She recognized the face immediately. Where did you get this? She whispered. Tell us what you know, Zainab said. The woman looked at Amara, then at Baba Jabari, then at the floor. Finally, she sighed the sigh of someone who has carried another person's secret too long. Bisi was never her real aunt, she said. Amara went cold. What? Mama Ronke wrung her hands. After the fire, Bisi found a baby crying behind a collapsed wooden shed. Amara's chest tightened. She told everyone she was taking the child to the police outpost. But later, she came back with the baby. Why? Zainab asked. The woman's voice dropped. She said the child had no one. Baba Jabari gripped his stick. That is a lie. Mama Ronke nodded slowly, unable to meet his face. Yes. She also found a small cloth bag with the baby. There was a note inside, but Bisi never showed it to anybody after that day. Inside was a note. smoke-stained but readable. Asterisk. If anything happens, please take my daughter to my father. Jabari Bello. Tailoring block. OK Itoku. Her name is Amara. Asterisk. Beneath it, in faint handwriting. Tell him I tried. Sad. The room broke. Baba Jabari bent forward and wept openly. Not the quiet tears of dignity, the broken tears of a father who had just heard the voice of his lost child through a piece of paper. Amara stood frozen, then covered her mouth. For years, she had believed she belonged nowhere. For years, she had believed she belonged nowhere. For years, she had thought her life began in abandonment. Now the truth stood before her. Now the truth. But the note answered only one part of the story. What had happened to Sade herself? The answer came from another source. A retired nurse, found through old clinic records Zainab's team helped trace. The nurse remembered a young woman with burns and smoke damage brought in after the fire. She had survived 2 days. Long enough to write a note. Long enough to beg someone to save her child. Long enough to say her father's name. But in the confusion of that tragic night, records were poorly kept, and her mother had not abandoned her. Her mother had fought for her. And in a world where lies had swallowed years, that truth mattered more than anything. She did. Amara sat beside him, not yet ready to call him grandfather, not yet ready for words that big. Why are you doing all this for us? Zainab looked at her for a long moment. Then she stood and walked toward the window. Zainab nodded. Satan Sakslist, one that swaxli sabsras mend. Zainab looked at hers, the kind that changes destinies. Neither woman spoke for a moment. Then Zainab added, and I also believe some moments are arranged by God. Amara lowered her eyes. Maybe they were. How else could one poor tailor, one blind old man, and one powerful widow have found themselves tied together by a hidden past? The relationship between Amara and Baba Jabari changed slowly, not in one dramatic moment, not all at once. Life does not always heal that quickly. She began visiting him in the small room Zainab arranged for him. She brought food. She read aloud to him. She told him about difficult customers, broken zips, missing buttons, and how men always promised to return for their clothes on Tuesday, but arrived on Friday with stories. How she loved yellow thread, how she talked while sewing, how she hated badly cut necklines, how she read yellow thread, how she talked while sewing, how she hated badly cut necklines, how she when. One afternoon, while she was helping Baba Jabari fold a wrapper, he touched her hand and said, I used to pray only to survive the day. Amara looked at him. Now I pray to live long enough to watch your life become what it should have been. Her eyes filled with tears. Baba. It was the first time she called him that with full meaning. The old man broke again, but this time the tears were not only grief, they were also gratitude. The man at the center of the old fraud was long dead, but some of the land transfers were still active through shell ownership. Money had been made from the ruins of Baba Jabari's destruction. That, Zainab refused to accept. Weeks turned into months of quiet legal work. Documents were corrected. False claims were challenged. Old signatures were verified. And slowly, very slowly, the truth began to push through the weight of years. One afternoon, Zainab called Amara and Baba Jabari into her conference room. The land that was stolen after the fire. It is back. The old man's lips trembled. I cannot use land, he whispered. I am old. I am blind. Zainab shook her head. You may not use it the old way, but your family can. Amara looked from one face to another, not trusting her own breath. Baba Jabari lifted both hands toward the air and began to thank God under his breath. Again and again. Again and again. Construction began months later. Not something too grand, not wasteful, but beautiful, functional, honest. A proper fashion and tailoring house with a training section for young girls who wanted to learn sewing but could not afford instruction. Zainab insisted on one thing, the name. When the signboard finally went up, Amara stood staring at it so long that the workers began smiling among themselves. Though blind, he asked to touch the raised metal letters on the sign. He traced them slowly, as if reading his own life back into existence. Your mother would have laughed, he said. Why? Amara asked through tears. Because she always said our family needed a signboard bigger than our pride. Even Zainab laughed at that, and for a moment, the wound of the past loosened just enough for joy to breathe. There was one more thing. Zainab had quietly arranged for Baba Jabari to see a specialist. Yes, Zainab said. What if it fails? Because yellow had been her mother's favorite thread. Months later, still with limited sight, still needing care. The old man stood in the front room of the fashion house and looked directly at Amara for the first time. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough. He lifted a trembling hand to her face. "You have your mother's eyes," he said, and though his vision was incomplete, the sentence carried the weight of a miracle. News travels strangely in markets, sometimes faster than truth, sometimes slower, but eventually everyone heard. The poor street tailor who used to sew under a faded umbrella now owned a proper fashion house. The blind old man people had mocked was not a useless wanderer, but a ruined master tailor whose name had once carried honor. And the elegant woman who used to pass quietly through the market was none other than Hajia Zainab Danjuma herself. Some people were ashamed, some pretended they had always been kind, some suddenly remembered how good they had been to Baba Jabari. But Baba Jabari only nodded and kept moving. The boys who laughed at his blindness now carried fabric bundles for Amara when they wanted work. Life had turned, and it had turned publicly. One afternoon, Amara returned to the exact spot where her old stall had stood. She looked at the umbrella, the chair, the table, the machine, all still there, though no longer needed. She did not throw them away. Instead, she had them moved into the training room at the new fashion house. When one of the girls asked why she kept such old things, Amara answered simply, "Because I must never forget where kindness met me." Through all this, Hajia Zainab changed too. Something inside her softened. For years, power had become her armor. She was respected, yes, feared, yes, but deeply alone. Helping Amara and Baba Jabari reopened a part of her life she had kept locked. The part that still believed goodness should not only survive in secret. The part that remembered hunger. The part that knew wealth means very little if it never bends low enough to lift someone. Lila noticed it first. "Auntie," the opening ceremony of Sade and Jabari House of Stitch was small, but beautiful. No loud politicians, no empty speeches, no unnecessary crowd, only people who mattered. A few market women, some girls chosen for free tailoring training, Lila, the doctor, two lawyers who had worked the case, and at the front, standing together, were Amara, Baba Jabari. She was never a woman of many words, but Baba Jabari squeezed her hand and whispered, "Speak as yourself. That is enough." So she stepped forward, looked at the room, then began. The room grew still. "But God had not forgotten me. My mother had not abandoned me. My family had not disappeared from heaven's memory. Truth was only delayed." Tears began in more than one eye. She looked at Baba Jabari, then at Zainab. "And all this began," she said, "because one day I decided not to look away from someone who was hungry. Silence, real silence, the kind that means a message has found its mark." Then she added, "Not overnight, but steadily. School uniforms, bridal consultations, custom senator wear, a line of hand-finished African jackets that gained attention online. Training classes filled up. Girls who once believed their future was limited began learning not only sewing, but pricing, finishing, customer care, and design confidence. Amara led with humility, firm, but never cruel, demanding, but never proud. If people began calling him *master again, and each time they did, something holy seemed to return to the air. Zainab visited without announcement, sometimes to inspect, sometimes just to sit and watch. On one such visit, she found Amara serving food to a hungry apprentice who had arrived late and embarrassed. Zainab smiled to herself. Some people, even after blessing enters their life, do not forget how to bend. Those are the people heaven trusts with increase. One quiet Sunday evening, after everyone had left, Amara sat alone in the cutting room, with a notebook. She had delayed it for months. But because some grief becomes lighter when given language, she wrote, "Mother, I know now that you tried. I know now that you loved me. I know now that I was not thrown away. For years I carried shame that belonged to lies. But truth found me. Your father is alive. He remembers you. He speaks of you like morning light. I sew now, just like you. Maybe my hands learned you before my mind did." He did not interrupt. He only said, "She would be proud." Amara turned, wiped her eyes, and smiled. "I hope so." "She would," he repeated. And for the first time, she believed it without fear. As this story comes to an end, it leaves behind a truth many people still ignore. Never look down on anyone. Never assume the person sitting in dust has no story. Never think your small act of kindness is too small to matter. Amara did not help Baba Jabari because she expected reward. She did not know one plate of food, one cup of water, one patient word would open opened the door to truth. She simply chose compassion, and that choice changed everything. Kindness does not always return quickly. Sometimes it returns after years. Sometimes it returns through people you never expected. Sometimes it returns not only as blessing, but as restoration. And when it does, it often brings back more than what was lost. It brings back dignity. It brings back identity. It brings back hope. Baba Jabari's reunion, or the way truth finally defeated years of silence? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss the next emotional story. Thank you for staying with us. Until the next story, take care of yourself and keep showing kindness wherever you go.